Hi, I'm Dr. Craig Malkin, clinical psychologist and lecturer for Harvard Medical School. I'm also a private practitioner and the author of Rethinking Narcissism, newly available in paperback. And in honor of its release, I am answering a slew of questions for an event that I put together called Real Narcissists, where people could go on my Facebook page and ask their questions. I can't answer all of them in detail. I'm trying to read ones where I can and collect them and answer them all at once. I'm going to move on now to questions about parenting. People have a lot of questions about parenting. What do I do if my ex is narcissistic? How do I protect my child? I'm working with lots of women right now with this very question. My first recommendation is that you have good support in going through the divorce. And there's a woman named Tina Swithin who runs a community, a fantastic community. At this point, is well over 20,000 people, I think, on Facebook. One Mom's Battle community. You can just go to Facebook. It's a great place to ask questions. It's a great place to ask, how do you protect yourself if you're in a dangerous situation. I highly recommend it. And she also offers services to coach you if you're having trouble in figuring out how to negotiate in custody battles. And she's been through hell and back herself and rebuilt herself and is an amazing person. So plenty of wisdom there. But let's talk about parenting. So one thing I want to warn you of: if you're going into mediation and your partner already shows all these warning signs, the 3 stop signs, they were non-collaborative before. Nobody who is narcissistic is going to get better after a divorce. They're going to get worse. We all get angry, unless it's the most amicable divorce ever. Most people get angry and they get reactive. It's a terrible experience for most people going through divorce. They'd much rather not do it. The more narcissistic someone is, the more they sort of have what an author friend of mine, Peg Streep, calls scorched earth policy. If you're entering into, you're trying to do mediation with somebody like that, it's not going to go well. Almost always the person who's more compromising ends up on the losing end. So I just want to make that clear. When we're talking about parenting, if you're dealing with somebody like that, there's no such thing as co-parenting. You're not going to be co-parenting. You're parallel parenting. I think other people have used that term before. I've been using it for years, but I think it's becoming popular in the conversation. Think of this as parallel parenting. And here is the good news. If you are worried, just one example, there's plenty. Chris, how does a mother manage relationships with her adult children who are fathered by a narcissist? What kind of tools would you put in place when you're divorced with 2 children and the narcissist still tries to use it as punching bag? Do they ever truly move on if there are children involved? I've talked about protecting yourself. How do you limit the hurt a narcissistic parent has on an adult child? First, the good news. No matter what you've heard, there was a recent large-scale study that said that telling kids they're special is what makes them more narcissistic. That is not what makes kids more narcissistic. We already know that in order to be narcissistic, you have to be insecurely attached. So here's the good news. We know from another large-scale study by a psychologist named Phoebe Kramer that yes, there does seem to be some kind of genetic component or predisposition where kids can show early signs of unhealthy narcissism, like being melodramatic, always wanting to be the center of attention. And just to clarify, when I say unhealthy narcissism, I'm talking about into the range of narcissistic personality disorder, not milder versions where people are just high in trait narcissism. We have to make a distinction between pathological narcissism and what's called subclinical narcissism, or what I've called subtle narcissism, and tried to help you spot as well, because it can be problematic as well. But when Phoebe Kramer looked at these children over time, over the course of 20 years, what she found was the children who scored high on these measures of early precursors for unhealthy narcissism were indeed more narcissistic later on in life, but only if the parenting they received was not responsive and attuned, meaning they gave help at an appropriate level to the child's developmental level, and they used what's called authoritative parenting, a combination of warmth and structure. where there were limits or rules, where they would talk to them about their feelings, or they would model how to talk about feelings, like I'm feeling sad now because Fluffy the cat died. That's a horrible name for a cat, but the cat died, and that's just why mommy or daddy are sad right now. And to teach children how to consider others. And I go through in detail, I believe, if I'm remembering correctly now, 8 or maybe even 9 keys to raising a healthy, self-confident child. We could call it promoting the healthy narcissism, those rose-colored glasses, but they come from secure attachment. They're one, and they're bonded together. If you're securely attached, you tend to have that more generous view of yourself that gives you that resilience. It's a slightly overly positive, without being to the range of delusional, as it happens with people who have narcissistic personality disorder. So the good news is that the children, even if they show those early precursors, if in particular in this study, there were some limitations, but in particular in this study, I think it was the mothers had a strong impact. That when they were engaging in this authoritative parenting, an example of which is teaching children about feelings. One example I give in the book is, if you're reading them books, you talk to them about what the characters are feeling, you ask questions, why might they be feeling it, teaching them to consider others. You put very strong limits on aggressive behavior, but you do it warmly and ask them to talk about what was going on, ask them to put words to their feelings. If you engage in that kind of authoritative parenting, your child cannot grow up to be extremely narcissistic. It doesn't matter what the other parenting is doing. So this is the good news. Your power lies entirely, whether you're a grandparent, some people wrote in who are grandparents, lies entirely in your relationship with your child. You have that control. If they come home with lies about what you've said or done, you simply correct them, like you would any mistruth, even if it's coming from an ex. You don't need to engage in the details. You don't even need to answer questions like, why did daddy lie about that? It doesn't matter. You don't even need to get into lies. Say, well, here's the truth. Here's what mommy wanted to do, or here's what mommy and daddy decided. And you listen. You don't need to get into a discussion about what's going on and why the one parent is saying and another. Children are smart. If you are consistent and reliable, predictable to your child, showing them you are there for them to listen. If they're upset because they feel like the custody arrangement is unfair and they're taking the anger to you, here's some more good news. If you're getting the brunt of it from your kids, it's usually a better sign, because the more securely attached a child is to their parent, the safer they feel kind of unleashing. It's terrible being on the receiving end of that, but it means they feel safe enough to kind of unload. And you work with that. I can see you're upset, sweetheart. Can you tell me I'm your mom and you're my child, and I need you to tell me in a respectful way. So let's take a few moments and breathe together. And then why don't you tell me, are you feeling sad? Do multiple choice if you have to, especially with young kids. Feeling sad, or you're feeling scared, or what's going on. If they can't tell you right away, at least what you've done is model talking about feelings, and you've sent the message that they have to rein that behavior in and talk about their feelings. If they can do that, they are securely attached over time to you. And people who are securely attached can't be extremely narcissistic, because to the extent you feel like you can depend on others when you're sad or scared or lonely, you won't depend on them for feeling special. You won't depend on feeling special, excuse me. whether you're trying to feel special by feeling like the misunderstood person in the room, or the most helpful person in the room, or the most attractive person in the room. You don't do that because you feel special to one person or persons. You feel like they've got your back no matter what. And you can tell them what's going on inside. So that's the good news. The bad news is this. And this is, again, where the parallel parenting comes in. You may not be able to collaborate, and especially when somebody's extremely narcissistic, you focus on your relationship with your child in the time that you're with them. And if they are upset about something that happens, you simply listen. As I said, if it's about the custody arrangements, of course it's upsetting to them, especially if they haven't quite got it yet, but children are smart. Over time, if you stick to it and you don't get dragged into, well, here's what dad did, or no, dad's lying about that. Don't do any of that. If over and over again your child hears nothing of that from you, and all they see, or your grandparent hears nothing of that from you, and all they hear is, tell me more or less, what's going on, sweetheart? What's going on, honey? Can you tell me? You seem really rattled right now. Let's take a moment. Is it this? Is it that you're scared? Is it you're anxious about? Because I know a lot of times the moving back and forth is hard. Is it that? If you're doing that, then you are creating the kind of relationship that is going to protect them against becoming extremely narcissistic. And don't worry about how special. I mean, all parents, one of my favorite lines is from a little princess. There's a story where the father winds up lost. They think he's dead, and then the little girl winds up in the care of some other people, and she's having a conversation with one of the caretakers, and she says that her father called her a princess, and the woman is like, well, you're not a princess. And she's like, well, yeah, of course we are. All daughters are their father's princesses. Didn't your father teach you that? Didn't he? It's very moving. It's that sense of feeling special. She doesn't mean that she's a special snowflake, or that she can do no wrong. She means that it doesn't matter, who she is. She feels loved, and she feels like someone is out there who cares about her and what she's thinking and what she's feeling. And that is what helps people develop the healthy rose-colored glasses and healthy relationships. Gwen asks, what does one say to a young daughter when the father makes ridiculous comments or requests that are controlling or unrealistic due to his narcissism without undermining as a parent or intentionally creating a triangulation? As I said, you listen and you correct the misinformation. And if asked, why did dad say that? You tell the truth. I don't know, but all I can tell you is I just want you to know what's going on, so that's clear. And so here's the situation. And leave it alone. And if they're upset, well, why would daddy say that? I don't know, sweetheart. How is it for you to hear something different? That's upsetting that you're hearing something different from me. Explore the feeling. Don't get into the content at all. Explore what it's like for your child. Give an ear to him or her, and help them put words to those feelings. But stay out of the questions about what motivates it or why, because that is triangulation and it's a trap, and it's nothing that matters. It's not about your relationship one-on-one with your child anyway, and that's what parallel parenting is about. If you can't collaborate, you let the courts work it out, what's going to happen, and you stick to it and you document to a T when things are departed from, and you put up barriers like I talked about in an earlier video to protect yourself, and you keep it at that.